Good evening, White Sox fans. It is Wednesday, February 26th. The weather here in beautiful Northern Illinois, at least for me, is getting much better. Unfortunately, the team's record down in Arizona is not. My name is Danny Miller. The gentleman you see sitting next to me here for his second episode is Jacob Thome, and this is Future Sox Hot Takes and Heaters. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing well. It's warmer, which, as you mentioned, it's even warmer down here. We got up to like 60 today, which I will take 60 in February any day of the week. Also, my water heater's fixed, so that is finally
That's
over
great
with. That
news.
was not, yeah, that was horrible. Um, no, we're doing well. Everything's going right, except for the White Sox, as you mentioned. White Sox not doing all right, but we'll get into that. But yeah, everything other than that going pretty good.
Cool, very cool. For me, I don't know if you can tell already, but voice sounds a little bit better this week. I've got a little more energy. I'm feeling a little bit more prepared. I think we are going to have an excellent show this week. But first things first, I haven't had a chance to tell you this yet. After your first show, a friend of the show reached out to me, and you had gotten some pretty high accolades uh,
Yeah.
for your first show. Yeah, high accolades, as in that boy is no fool. So, congratulations to you on your first show, sir. That is my buddy Dave Saprinsky. He's a longtime listener, and we call him Cousin Dave. He's a good guy. I've known most of my life, so just figured I'd throw that out to you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some White Sox content. We talked about right there in the opening that the White Sox are not doing all that great in spring training. And, we'll have to put the emphasis on spring training because obviously we don't expect this team to be, world beaters, but it is still spring training. And, they're going to be working some kinks out. But the biggest and hottest news going around the world of the White Sox right now is the Ishbia brothers. Most notably, I should say, Justin Ishbia, who has upped his or is trying to up his stakes in his White Sox ownership and pretty much abandoning any endeavors that he had with the Minnesota Twins. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit on that. How do you feel about that? What do you think about Justin Ishbia kind of grabbing some more of the White Sox stake in ownership?
Yeah, it's great news. I mean, I think you look at like, okay, he was the perfect owner for the Twins. I believe if Matt and Justin combined would be the second wealthiest owners in the MLB, behind Cohen in New York. So you take that, and then you add on to the fact that he could have been going to an in-division rival, and now seems lined up to take over the Sox eventually. I would assume sooner than later. Um, just because obviously he could have had the team, right? I think that's the biggest part about this is like he had the Twins deal lined up. In fact, I have no sources on this because I'm not close enough, but it almost felt like he might have been trying to go to Jerry and say, "Hey, I need to sell my portion of the team," because he had owned previously. He had owned part of the team to go buy the Twins. Obviously, you can't own part of the White Sox and be the full owner of the Twins.
Yeah, there's a little
And
bit of a
maybe,
conflict of interest there, right?
yeah, just a tiny bit. Um, and it seems like maybe then that was when Jerry was like, "Well, if you stick around, there's potentially an opening here." So this feels like the best news for the White Sox since maybe 2005. I don't know. But yeah, it feels like potentially a new corner's been turning, or about to
Cool.
turn, I should say.
So as far as like them, trying to get in, obviously being billionaires that him and his brother are, um, do you feel like this is a move where White Sox fans have been kind of talking about how we have an owner that doesn't really show a propensity to spend a lot of money, right? We don't go out and get the finishing pieces and the big free agents that are going to cost you know six, seven figure, or I'm sorry, we're looking at the big deals. You're not getting the 100,000 or $100 million guys. We haven't had one yet in the White Sox system. Do you feel like this is something that the Ishbias can bring, or there was a report today and I believe it was 670 to score. I want to say it was Dan Bernstein on his show this morning. They were saying that he's got sources that think this is more of a, maybe Jerry's trying to convince the Ishbia brothers to invest in the property at the 78, and it's more of a real estate deal than it is a control of White Sox ownership. You have any thoughts on that? What do you think?
I mean, I just the biggest thing for me is the fact that he had the Twins lined up, and he's a baseball guy. Justin's a baseball guy. Matt's the basketball guy. I just don't see clearly Justin Ishbia wants to own a baseball team. That's very that's been put out there. He was lined up by the Twins, so I don't think there's any shot that he foregoes the opportunity to buy the Twins without having a conversation with Jerry Reinsdorf lined up that he is going to eventually take control of the Chicago White Sox. I don't think it's. I just don't see a way. He's too smart to do that. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I understand that there's real estate involvement. Obviously, he owns a private equity firm here in Chicago. But I just don't. I think obviously that's going to be a big question if he does become sole owner. Is what do they do with the stadium? But I really just don't see him overgoing that twin sale to just become a anything other than the main owner of the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you there because, like you said, him being the baseball guy, uh, him and his brother, obviously both very smart individuals. You don't get to be, a $7.5 billion guy and a $10 billion guy, by being stupid. I will say this though, I don't think that them getting involved in the property at the 108 and maybe bringing the financial end of that around even more than the 200 million committed by Jerry Reinsdorf now. Uh, I think them getting more involved in that would not be a bad idea either, especially with all the businesses that are kind of connected to that plan. They're talking about hotels and retail and everything else and condos and whatnot. Uh, all of that stuff I feel like is things that are going to bring a return on investment other than what the White Sox are going to be doing at the stadium there as well. Uh, you know, you have to spend money to make money is what some people will tell you. I think that being the last undeveloped kind of big area in Chicago is something that, and particularly right along the river there as well too. If they develop that area up and down the river, they extend the Riverwalk down, or they turn it into another end of the Riverwalk, because it's going to be difficult with some of the buildings that are there, going down to the South Branch. But making that a place where you're going to get more tourism up and down the river as well as the stadium, it makes too much sense from a money standpoint. So maybe the White Sox do get this new stadium and that deal done, or maybe they force the Bears to kind of make some more decisions on what they're going to do with their team as well. So I don't see any of this as a bad thing. I originally did. I'm not going to lie. If anybody here is listening and paying attention to my social media at all, the first thing I said was, be careful what you wish for. And that was going back and looking at what is happening with the Phoenix Suns. They've doled out two really big contracts. One of them looks better than the other, obviously. And then the other thing, the thing that I was really kind of trying to point out was they traded away so many draft picks. They leveraged their draft picks. They leveraged their future to kind of go into win now mode. And as of right now, it doesn't look like it's working out. They have some time to turn that around, but as I go back and look at it, I feel like the fact that there was money spent and there was some big contracts doled out, maybe I should be looking at it from that point of view. And MLB not being a salary cap league, that could be, it could work wonders for the
Yeah,
White Sox.
yeah,
So,
and I think something else to phone look at. Somebody put out a tweet, and it's not on the top of my head right now, but somebody was like, "The White Sox could sign Kyle Tucker and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next offseason and still be under $100 million in payroll. So you start looking at that, and then you're like, well, if he wants to spend, if he wants to be up there with the Dodgers, like you could have 200 to like $220 million to spend next offseason. And I'm not saying that you should spend it all in an offseason, but you could do a lot with $220 million of payroll. Um, and obviously, like I said, not in one offseason, but there's just a change of everything. And really, you look at the Sox, you know, I think a lot of fans are like, this is doom and gloom, but like, you don't need that much. Like, I think pitching wise, you're good. Just looking into the future. And so you'd only really need a couple of impact bats um, to, really, and then the development of the prospects to, you know, become something, um, really, really strong in the next potential contention window for the Sox.
Yeah. So, talking about that window, and I know this is way too early to even be, trying to prognosticate. But let's just say that this I don't even know what you want to call a power grab, but maybe a slow crawl towards controlling
Freedom.
interest. Yeah, a slow call towards controlling interest because everybody and their brother seems to think that this deal, with Ishbia being able to take over, is probably well into the future. It may even hinge on Jerry's health or imminent demise, which I honestly don't even want to get into. I don't want to get morbid here. We are Sox fans and we can say what we want, but I will never wish ill will on anyone. But you know, if this is the kind of thing that maybe brings a little bit more money into play for the White Sox, and we talk about that pitching staff, uh, the system being ranked anywhere from like 2 to 5 in most places this year. It looks like there's going to be some guys in that system that are probably going to come up maybe as early as midseason this year and going to have a shot to come up next season. Do you feel like that could accelerate this rebuild and maybe we see a fairly competitive team in 2026 and possibly even working their way towards a perennial at least contender in the Central in the next 2 years?
Yeah, the year for me, I think, is 2028. That's kind of what I think. 2027, which would be 2 years, would be, or what would that be? Three, technically, it'd be 3 years. Um, I think you'll start to see, kind of 2019 White Sox vibes where they were fun, um, and did a lot of good things. You can kind of see the future, but you kind of have to get everything going in the right direction. You have to start getting some of the guys going. Um, and it's going to be a lot of growing pains, and it always is when you bring up prospects. Um, but yeah, I mean, you have to not. It's not just. I think it's not just about guys debuting. It's a growth process also in the MLB, for those guys to really start hitting their prime. And when you're talking about the bats of Colson, the other Montgomery Braden, and then obviously the pitchers. Um, I think you have to find something there, and then you have to be able to. It's hard right now because I threw Kyle Tucker and Vladimir Guerrero out there. I don't know if I would sign anybody this offseason, just if not that he's going to take control of the White Sox this offseason. But um, you don't want to sign guys too early too, because then, say Wolko has a massive year and he's your next right fielder, and then you sign Kyle Tucker for nothing. So kind of got to wait on that. But I think there's hope that, I always go back to like when they had the chance to sign Bryce Harper and they didn't. And they were all in on Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. If you would have added Bryce Harper to that 2021 team, he would have been a left-handed power bat with plus defense and right. I think you finally would have that would have put them over the edge and would have made them a competitor. And um, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But just having an owner that'll go out and do the extra work to spend money to get a Bryce Harper type of guy when you're ready, I think is a huge asset for the White Sox to come.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head too. We can kind of toss names around right now, but like I said, it's way too early to even be making these kind of predictions. It was more just a an exercise in maybe hope, as opposed to like an
I don't
exercise
know
of
if we
futility, like we
get
do
that word
around here
for
quite
White
often.
Sox.
No,
I
no,
don't
go
know if
ahead.
White Sox fans get that word. Hope. I don't know if that's a
Well,
word that's
we've
used
had
in
it
Japan.
before, and I think now most of us are so jaded that we're like, for me, I've been saying, since last season, Ian and I together, and then Nick and I together, probably 2 seasons now, where I'm like Missouri. You got to show me. That's my state of mind. Show me something. Uh, the direction of the team looks like they're more focused on the internals. You know what I mean? And that in and of itself to me gives me a little bit of hope. Kind of figuring out exactly what's going on with your organization. Outside of the product that's on the field. So that I have hope in. Hearing these things about the Ishmael brothers, specifically Justin, gives me a little bit more hope. Like I said, I was a little apprehensive at first, but the more time I got to think about it, that gives me a little bit of hope. Uh, but down the road, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't really know. Again, being burned as many times as we have, and you're way younger than I am. I'm coming up on 50 years old this year. Uh, I watched this movie before. I watched the '94 White Sox as a teenager. I was like 18 years old going into the military, and I watched that whole thing kind of go down as here we finally have a team that's looking like they're going to do something, and then you find out that the lockout was orchestrated by your owner, and then you go into the white flag trade, and then we had the 2005 years, and everything was great. In 2006, they looked good. In 2008, they looked good again, and then things just kind of went and tanked. And when they did go out and spend, they maybe didn't spend in the right places. So here's to keeping that hope alive with the internal structure of the organization and the staff hires right now. We'll see where the player development and the finishing pieces come in a few years. But we're not going to spend too much time into that today. So I did want to say, Uncle Ted is in the chat. He was talking about Mason Adams. Man, did you get the chance to catch his inning the other day? 8 pitch, 2K
Um,
inning.
I don't think so. I think that was a game where I had the wrong stream. Some came up anyway. I couldn't see it, but yeah, I know he was lights out. He's a guy I'm excited for
Uh,
2025.
so typically I'm the guy who thinks that somebody who doesn't throw in the high 90s is going to get dinged. But in Mason Adams' case, I've been watching this guy come up through the system. His control and his handle of the strike zone, his command is just absolutely it's just it amazes me. It really does. He reminds me, and I don't want to say too much. I'm not going to make the comp totally, but he reminds me a little bit of a Greg Maddux type pitcher where he doesn't have to throw 100 miles an hour. He can get away with being 92, 93 because his stuff is filthy and he puts it exactly where he wants to. It's unbelievable. So thanks for that shout out, Uncle Ted. I think here at Future Sox, there's a lot of Mason Adams fans, and we're all kind of looking forward to him as well too. So hopefully, it looks like if he keeps it up, he's got a shot at cracking the team here sometime soon. I don't want to say it's going to happen opening day, but I do believe we're going to see him probably before the break in 2025. So yeah, he is filthy. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on pitchers today, but we will talk about them a little bit. We're going to do a whole show on the pitchers probably next week as we get closer, maybe 2 weeks from now, as we get a little bit closer to opening day, because that is probably the most volatile of the positions on the field and who's going to make the team, who's going to make the bullpen, who's going to be in the rotation. So we're going to kind of wait till some of those guys weed themselves out. We'll hear a little bit more from from Chris Getz and Will Venable on that. But speaking of Venable, today he did name 3 pitchers to the starting rotation in Davis Martin, Martin Perez, our probably our biggest off signings. Whoa, Are we there? You hear me?
I hear you.
Can you hear
Do you
me?
hear me?
Uh, yeah, I had some crackling and buffering there for a minute on my mic, so I apologize if there was any issues. But anywho, yeah. So he brought up the Davis Martin Perez, which was our uh, biggest pretty much off season signing this year, and Jonathan Cannon are going to be locked into the rotation at this point. Big news, surprise, surprise. We kind of all knew that was coming, but to hear it this early and for somebody to actually give those guys a title and a spot this early is encouraging for those three gentlemen, and usually not something that you hear from a manager this early. I know in the White Sox organization, nobody's ever given a spot, a guarantee this early in the season. So shout out to those three guys. And since we're on the subject of pitching, have you uh, have you heard any updates on Prelander Baroa?
I don't believe so. I know he has that strain, and it's going to be day to day, which is unfortunate because I put out a tweet saying that he was going to be the Sox All Star. So I'm going to I'm going to stop tweeting out things about people becoming All Stars because apparently they just get injured. Um, so yeah, I was really excited for him. I think he'll be all right. Obviously the hope there is obviously it's an elbow injury. Everybody immediately jumps to Tommy John. So hopefully he does avoid that, like Uncle Ted said in the comments, and we're all good. But yeah, not great.
Yeah, no. So the reason I brought it up was I actually did catch an article this afternoon. I believe it was Merkin, if I'm not mistaken. Scott Merkin kind of. Maybe I'm wrong. I read a lot of stuff today. I can't remember where half of it came from. I'm on the internet pretty much all day long reading White Sox articles whenever I have a few extra minutes. Um, but the one thing I did see was that there's a little bit of doubt now on the Prelander Baroa elbow strain and how long it's going to take. I mean, so basically they said the team is going to let him rehab it, and it sounds like he did escape Tommy John for now.
Right,
And
that's the issue.
that was an interview with Venable, who said he escaped it from now. We're going to let him rehab on his own and see where he's at from there. But when you hear for now, it gives me the feeling that maybe they had, seen a specialist, and that specialist was like, could go either way, kind of thing. And maybe I'm reading into it, but it just didn't give me a warm and fuzzy, right? Like Ian says in
Yeah.
the chat, uh, the forearm is kind of scary, Ted. It's always scary, but I like Ian's comment here. It's a hashtag Dane Dunning. They did that to Dane early on in his career as well, and never really gave him a chance to kind of figure that out. And before we knew it, he was getting his TJ. So I hope that's not the case with Prelander, like you said. Uh, Chances are he was going to be our All Star. So
Yeah.
you know, tots and pairs to him and his elbow. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. But it sounds like he's going to miss at least the rest of spring and possibly even some of the early season as well. But we'll follow up with that a little bit as it
So
goes
do
on.
they hang his jersey then in the bullpen in Arizona, or is that only for Eloy? You think like he gets like his own little section in the bullpen out there?
Right? What is he? Yeah, that's their version of thoughts and prayers, right? So I don't know, man. It hasn't really worked out great for Eloy in the past when that
No.
happened. So I'm hoping they kind of don't do that. Let's move on to bigger, better, newer things. Thanks for bringing that up, by the way, man. You kind of gave me the
No,
heebie-jeebies.
I remember that. And that was yeah. Like he died. They posted it like he died. And it was like, dude,
That's
he's like
kind of my
out for like
point.
2 weeks or I don't it might have been 2 months, but like
Yeah, we're having funerals in the dugout for
right.
Eloy's hammies and shoulders from hanging off of fences in spring training. You gotta love the guy, man. I mean, he was a big baby, and he loved his mom. Obviously, he was a fun guy to watch and follow, but oh, how do you put your entire career in jeopardy by doing dumb things? You know, shout out Eloy. Sorry, buddy. We're gonna miss you. We're gonna miss your antics for sure.
Hopefully, he's enjoying Tampa.
I'm sure he's enjoying the weather. It's much better than it is here.
Yeah,
Those cold springs and Septembers. So we're gonna get into the middle infield like we talked about last week, right? But I do want to say that we can try to prognosticate as much as we want on the position battles. But man, oh man, is the infield just in general an absolute mess? And we thought originally, if you had listened to our show last week, if you haven't listened to our show last week, by the way, go ahead and go back and do that because we did do our corner infielder kind of position battles and predictions. Man, we thought there was going to be a battle between a couple other guys at third base last week, did we not? And just within the last day here, we get news that Venable is giving Vargas the go ahead as the primary third baseman to start the season.
might
What
want
do
to
you think
rescind
about
that
that?
statement after today.
I was just going to ask. You caught the game today, right? Or some
Yes,
of it at least. You caught some
I
highlights,
caught the first
lowlights,
half, and
highlights,
then I fell
lowlights.
asleep, and then it was yeah.
Yeah. So uh, I imagine that those statements might change because if anybody hasn't caught the game today, like I said, today is February 26th. He butchered some plays out there, man. I mean, his glove. And again, I don't want to jump down a guy's throat. I don't want to beat these guys up too bad because I'm hoping that gets made some moves that we can be proud of. And
Yeah,
I just haven't seen a whole lot of it yet out of these trades. Uh, I feel like maybe the Kyle Teal thing is going to be the one that I'm really looking at as like the winner of any guys that he brought in, at least so far. But man, Vargas he's tough to watch with the glove, right?
yeah. I mean, he's almost in like you have to DH him territory, which will work now because the Sox don't have a DH. But like he's never gonna be a good enough hitter to make him the D. He's just not a good enough hitter, So he's gonna have a um, weird time finding a position. Like, obviously there's thought of like he played some left field, but like you saw him play left field last year, and it was potentially worse than third. Um, and like, Do you move him to first? I don't think so. I don't know. So no, I mean I think right now he's a DH and he's never gonna like I said, he's never gonna be good enough hitter. He can add on as many 20 pounds of muscle as he would like, but he's never gonna have I just don't see the power potential there. I don't think he's gonna be a good enough hitter to really be, a guy who you can trust anywhere. So it's an unfortunate trade. I like the trade. We talked about it last show. We won't get back into it, but I like the trade last year. But it has quickly fallen apart as he's arrived to Chicago.
Yeah, I mean the hope is that the bat does come around. Whatever numbers that he had in spring training, or I'm sorry, in the minor leagues, versus whatever numbers he's got going on in the majors, they just don't correlate so far. He is only 25 years old. He might just be looking for that breakthrough. I know the Sox uh, noticed some things in his swing mechanics last year and felt like they didn't want to mess with it too much in season because it's just a lot for a guy to think about in the middle of the season after being traded to, the absolute dumpster fire that is the White Sox from the juggernaut that is the Dodgers, right? So that right there is kind of a head issue for a lot of guys, I can imagine. But at the same time, he's got a guy that is struggling with his glove in a new stadium and a new team, and you compound all that stuff, and it's a lot, on the brain. So when they noticed these things in his swing, they decided to kind of wait till the off season. So Getz gave him, the challenge of I need you to get stronger this off season. But they also have been working on his swing and getting his hands out in front of him a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out. But my thought is if you can't field and your bat doesn't come around, how do we even throw you in a DH spot? You know what I mean? Like you're looking at the possibility of the what is supposed to be the centerpiece of that Fetty Kopech fam deal possibly being off the team. Maybe as early as mid-season if he doesn't get his back going. So again, we're not going to spend too much time on that. We talked about it a little bit last week, but you know, yeah, Uncle Ted uh, might be a little harsh. Let's give him some time. He's only had a half season here. Uh,
The worst thing too about it is like he was good. Not I shouldn't say good, but like he was above average. I think he had posted an OPS plus over 100 in LA, and it is just not translated at all to Chicago. And yeah, getting traded from LA to Chicago, I get it, but my gosh, has he been bad in Chicago?
it is what it is, man. Again, then you just try to be hopeful, and I don't. You know what? I can't even lie about it. Like you're just, I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm at the very frayed end of that rope. So if it happens, it happens. I hate to be right if it doesn't. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, Miguel, if you're ever hearing this. I doubt anybody on the team is hearing any of this stuff, but if you are, I'm not trying to poop on you, dude. You just got to get it together, please. Make me wrong. Make Chris Getz look good. Make the White Sox look good, please, please, please.
Believe
Oh,
me,
and
other
let's
people
stop
in the
talking
media
about that
think we're
Mendoza line here because we got way too many guys hitting close to 200 or below. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get into the middle infield then. I'm going to go ahead and pass that right off to you because there are a ton of names
It's
out there
insane.
and a ton of guys who are very similar in their skill sets.
A lot
And
of
why don't
contact.
we go ahead? I mean, we could say we could start at shortstop or second base, but I feel like in many cases, with a lot of the guys that are gunning for a position, are almost interchangeable between the two. So go ahead and kick it off, and let's get some thoughts going on that. Also, I just want to reach out to the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for all your comments, and go ahead, feel free to give us your ideas in the middle infield as well too. Because wow, what a mess!
It's a intertwine of bad baseball. Um, yeah, so let's start at second, just because I think there's more primary second basemen that will play more shortstop this year. Um, and so I mean, like Josh Rojas is the guy they signed. I think he's going to play third, although apparently Vargas is playing third. So if he's going to be the everyday second baseman, I don't love that because they're taking away opportunities, I think, from other guys that we'll get into. But Rojas, a good defensive guy up the middle, contact heavy. Um, we'll see if it works out there. But I think he's more of a third baseman for the Sox team. What are your kind of your thoughts on that?
You know, I am I am so far between. Honestly, I don't know where to start with any of it. So if you really want to know, like where my head is, I'm kind of hoping that the homegrown guys get more opportunities than anybody they brought in, and that's where my head is. So I don't even want to comment on that. Like people talk about Brandon Drury, people talk about, uh, you know, any of the guys, Chase Meadroth. Uh, I'm of the notion that I want to see more. I want to see more Brian Ramos. I want to see more Lenny Sosa. I want to see Brooks Baldwin type guy. So that's kind of where my head's at. So this is part of the reason why I kind of leaning on you to do this
Yeah,
because I'm a little biased. I just am. We've been watching these guys for so long. It's just where my head is, dude.
no, I totally get it. Um, so that was Rojas, and then Drury, who according to spring training, is more of a first baseman. They view him as, which makes sense. He's played some first base. I like Drury to make the team over Gallo. I won't poop on Tim Elko or Joey Gallo any more than this sentence. Um, because I did that quite a bit. So I don't even know if Drury's considered a middle infielder because I think he'll play more corner if he makes the team. Again, he's a guy in a minor league deal. Um, then you have my personal favorite, which is Lenyn Sosa. Um,
Huge fan.
defensively, defensively not great, but I think the
No.
bat is there. I think he's a guy that if you get consistent at bats, he can turn it around. He had a really good end to the season last year. I believe he posted an 800 plus OPS in the last 20-ish games or something like that. Um, so I'm that's my hope is that Sosa's at second. Then there's Brooks Baldwin, who I think is never going to be a starter, but I think he's perfect as like a super utility. He is a perfect Lurie Garcia. Like he is a perfect guy who can play
Okay.
second, short, outfield, and that's perfect because he was like he was a late round pick. I think people had really high expectations for him, but I don't. I think he's always going to be a contact first type of guy who just kind of plays everywhere, and that's perfect. That's kind of what they need. They need a cheap guy who you can have as a super utility. So I enjoy watching Baldwin, and I hope I think he makes a team. I don't think he's going to be the starting second baseman, but I really do think he's a guy who makes a team and has impact as a utility type of player. Um, then there's Andre Lipsius, who I don't even know where he came from. He's in on I
Yeah.
think he's from the Dodgers. If I am, I could totally be
I
incorrect. I'm pretty sure
I
he's the.
think you're right. Actually, there's so many of those NRIs this year that are just it's astounding almost.
It's awful. It's hard to keep up with. Um, Tristan Gray is another one. I had no idea who Tristan Gray was, and then he hit like a double, I think, yesterday. And it was like, oh, all right, no idea who you are, but welcome to the White Sox. Hopefully, you can stick around. Um, and then there's Chase Meadroth, the guy that they pick up in the trade for Crochet. Um, another high contact, get on base, draw walks. I think he had like a 400 plus on base in AAA last year. So I think really, if I had to pick, it'd be between Meadroth and Sosa. If you are going to play Rojas at third, um, and yeah, I really like either of those options. I think Sosa's got a little more power potential from second base, which is something rare in the MLB. Where Meadroth is a guy who can consistently get on base, is a really insane hit tool, and also walks at a pretty good clip. So, um,
Yeah, me personally, I think just because Sosa is out of options, I think he gets an opportunity somewhere on this ball club early on. Again, I've been a big fan of his early since they drafted him, which it feels like was decades ago at this point. He's been in the system so long. Uh, you know, I watched him kind of come from this skinny little. I mean, he was super toothpick thin, skinny little kid, and is now, like you said, got a little bit more power than the average second baseman. If we could kind of get the glove together, maybe a little bit better, that would be super fantastic. And then, like you say, Chase Meadroth. I mean, this guy's an on base machine, and I think that's kind of what Thames and Fuller are really looking to get more of out of this ball club. Think Moneyball. You
mm-hmm,
know, I don't care if you hit 30 home runs. Do you get on base? Do I don't care what you do other than getting on base. And I think Meadroth is that guy. So I get the feeling, and I it seems like they really like this kid, right? I mean, he's getting some looks during spring training games where he's maybe getting a little bit more time than some other guys out there. Uh, I think that's going to be something to kind of keep an eye on as spring training goes, and kind of keep our ears to the wire as far as what Getz and Venable and Thames and Fuller have to say about him. Uh, but my next question is how do you feel about Riku Nishida? I don't, and I'm with you. I don't feel like he's gonna make it in this mix, but I mean, how do you really feel about Riku Nishida?
I think he's a fun player. I problem is I'm not up to speed with him completely. I know he's just a fun little guy who's just um has a ton of speed and a pretty solid hit tool.
Well, that's kind of
But
where I'm at on him. It would almost be just fun to watch him get up to the MLB ball club because I feel like this guy was be he'd be the kind of slap hitter that will take extra bases all day long, catch guys sleeping. He's a guy like it reminds me of a kid when I was playing when I was young. I was probably like 12 playing little league, and we had a guy who would literally hit balls in the infield and just keep running. He would beat the ball out at first, and he would just make the turn and go, and he would force errors all over the defense because they had no idea how to stop him from running. He was just a little spark plug. So in that sense, I feel like he would be a lot of fun to watch. I just don't know if he's going to ever be an MLB regular. I just need to see more of him, you know? So,
Yeah, he seems like he could be another Brooks Baldwin type of guy who's like a guy who potentially comes in as a utility guy. Um, I don't know if he'll ever be Steven Kwan, although I get the comparison. I really do. Um, kind of one of those short kind of guys who just has sneaky power. Um, but I think he's a wait and see guy. Where did he? Do you know what level he got up to last year? Did he get up to Charlotte, or was he in Birmingham all year, or was he
I
even
think he
lower than that?
stayed. Oh, if Ian's in the chat, he'll be able to let us know, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
he
I know
stayed
Ian's.
in double A, if I'm not mistaken. So,
He was a late call up to Double A, so
yeah.
I think he's
So,
a couple years away, but we'll see.
right. Right. He's just a lot of fun to watch. And as Uncle Ted in the chat points out, he is lefty as well. So,
Yeah, he can be a fun kind of guy. He's another guy that he's one of those hitters where I'm really excited to see what Fuller does with him. Um, it's hard to get Bannister type of production out of a hitting core. It's harder to develop hitters like that. You can't just add a splinker to a hitter, but we'll see. But he's one of those bats that I think is at least interesting um, to watch develop as Fuller gets a hand on him.
I'm with you there. So I think that I don't know unless you got another name or two to throw out there because there really are more. Honestly, we could kind of go down the line, but I don't think they're much worse. Excuse, wow. See now I'm having the issues that you had last week with the brain to mouth disease going on here. Uh, I think that pretty much covers second baseman. I don't think anybody else is really worth bringing up because I don't think they have any shot at beating the guys out that we've talked about making the squad. So uh, let's go ahead and move on to where you think shortstop kind of plays out and the top handful of guys that are going to be battling it out there as well.
I think it's the same group, honestly. I mean, you just kind of you move if you can't play second, you'll play some short. Obviously, the hope is for Colson Montgomery, right? I mean, that's the hope. Who absolutely demolished the ball in the first spring training game, demolished the ball yesterday, um, which was a good note to see. Also, the bat speed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. With him coming up is encouraging. Hoping to bounce back. Ian, you're not a Jacob Amaya enjoyer. What are you talking about? I'm convinced Jacob Amaya has some kind of dirt on the White Sox organization because they saw what he did last year and then decided to bring him back. They released him, and then he was with the Orioles for maybe a week. Got cut immediately right back. Him and Clevenger have some kind of dirt, and we can talk Clevenger if you want to. Um,
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get into that just for a minute or two at the
yeah,
end here. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit.
but two guys that just have some sort of dirt on Gets. I don't know who, but
The
the
ball
ball.
impacts Jacob Amaya's bat. Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, okay. In all realness, I do understand bringing it back on Maya. He's one of the only true shortstops they have. Um, he's a plus defender. He had a 400 OPS, not on base, OPS last year. He's just a automatic out pretty much. But hey, he plays defense, so I get bringing him in. But obviously, the hope is for Colson Montgomery to be the starting shortstop day one.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I mean, he's got to have the biggest monster of spring training to be able to do that. I mean, because he only had a limited time in Charlotte, where he wasn't riddled with injury.
Yeah.
and I think we just need to see more of that. Me personally, I'm with you. I've been waiting. We've been waiting since he's been drafted to see this kid come up.
Mhm.
I just don't know that with the plethora of guys that you have on the team now, is it really necessary to bring him up now? And I feel like you're going to be splitting time,
Right.
and I'd rather him play every day, at least to start the season, because as we've gone down that list, you've got the Lenny Sosas, you've got the Brooks Baldwins, you got the Chase Meadroths, you've got Vargas. Well, Vargas isn't a middle infielder by any means, but
Please never throw Vargas at short.
no,
My.
but I mean, you've got so many guys that are interchangeable between shortstop and second base that unless Colson Montgomery has really shown that he is the guy that we all hope he's going to be and the guy that he was drafted to be, I just don't know that I want to see him day one because I want to see him get all the playing time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And maybe they do that. Maybe they decide to stick a couple of these guys on the bench as, like you mentioned, super utility players, guys that can play both infield and outfield, and maybe swing the bat a little bit. But yeah, I don't really know if they do bring him up. It's going to be awesome because we've been waiting for it for so long. I just don't know if it's the smartest thing in my book.
Yeah, it's a hard line, right? Because you're looking at a guy like you want him to get the major league at bats help, right? In terms of his development, but also confidence wise, you're having a guy who did not have a good year last year. Um, didn't have a bad year, just it wasn't what we're used to with Colson.
Right, and he
A little
wasn't
more
full healthy
strikeouts,
the whole year, right? So
right?
I mean, that's the thing, and I just want to see. Give me a month or two in
Yeah,
Charlotte with a fully healthy Colson Montgomery, and I again, like you say, development doesn't end when you reach the major league ball club. I don't really think it ends. You don't stop learning until the day you're hanging it up, right? There's
yeah,
always something new, especially in the game today. I mean, there's so much new tech, there's so much new analytics and philosophies, and so many different, strength and conditioning ideas, and all these things are constantly evolving and changing. But I don't want that to be thrown into a guy's lap if he's not at least eclipsed the level, the last level that he was at, right? Where he's showing that that level of competition is no longer good enough for his development. So
yeah. I will say it was very positive. He posted a really good bat speed yesterday on that line out,
yeah, I was waiting for you to
which is
bring this
something
up
that,
actually.
yeah, which is something that he struggled with last year, kind of catching up to the heaters. So, and that goes back to that back injury, right, where he had that back injury, and um, if the bat speed's there, but I think if the bat speed's there, I think it's perfect to send him back down to Charlotte and let him gain stuff in Charlotte. Yeah, 70. I think 78 was the number. You need that bat speed back. That's what made uh, you know his ability to get to the heater, and also makes you throw more breaking balls, which can help the walk numbers a little bit. So I'm agree with you. I think a lot of Sox fans wants to see him with the major league club to start, but I would rather have him start in Charlotte and post something good. I
Yeah,
really would like to see that
I mean,
going
don't get me
forward.
wrong. If it happens, fantastic. That just tells me that they're seeing what they need to see. At least I'm going to put my trust in Venable, and I'm going to put my trust in Ryan Fuller, and I'm going to put my trust in Marcus Thames, and you know if they think that he's ready to go, if they think this is the best next step in his development, fantastic. And like I said, we've all been waiting for it so long. It's going to be fun to watch. I just hope that he doesn't fall flat on his face because immediately, as tough as this fan base is, it's going to be difficult to go on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else and not see this guy's a bum. They did it
Yeah,
again. They're going to crap all over this kid, and hopefully he stays off social media because the minute he has any kind of a struggle, this fan base is tough, man. It's a tough
yeah.
place to play baseball. Most sports in general, but baseball really, oof, it's bad. So
Well, even
I
just
hope he doesn't
it's
go
a
through
fan base that's angry, and so they're looking for anybody to hate on. And yeah, if you're not, I can already see it now. this is the guy we've been waiting for 4 years, and he can't hit a freaking slider or whatever. He strikes out 40%. Can already see it now. So no, I'd like to see him really start to heat up in Charlotte, and then bring up. I don't think he needs to be down there long. I would assume like a May or June call up. I think would be
That
perfect
would
if he
be,
really.
in my mind, that would be fantastic. Let me see him hit, golf balls with an
Yeah,
aluminum bat out of that bandbox that is Truest down there, and then bring them up. But like I said, I'm just a guy sitting in the suburbs of Chicago doing a podcast with another guy who is sitting in you know downstate Illinois, and what do we know? We can only go off of what we're given here and the information that's out there, and we'll see, man. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to, at least at some point this year, his appearance on the MLB club.
yeah.
So,
So
you got anything else for shortstop? I know that pretty much. Is there any other names? Because I'm right there with you. It's mostly the same guys that are going to be competing for second. You're going to keep for shortstop. Do you want to throw anybody else out there other than Colson that we haven't talked about?
Jacob Amaya is the only other one that I think is a true
Oh, you do
shortstop.
want to talk to him. I thought you were ready
Uh,
to just toss
I
him to
mean,
the
we
way.
share a first name. Um,
Okay, all right.
yeah, I don't know if there's much to talk about. The dude
That's
lives a
it.
cool noodle. Um, he plays good defense. That's about it. He's a defense first guy, which is fine. Whatever. Um, yeah.
I mean, if that's the
That's
way they're looking to go, welcome back to 2024. We're going to improve on defense. Oof, they did not. They did not improve at defense. I'm with you, James. I do kind of like Meadroth at short. I like Meadroth on this team in general, just because I feel like maybe his hitting philosophy. He doesn't chase. He extends at bats. He gets on base. He's got a halfway decent OPS. He's just that guy. He's probably the only guy that you would even think is close to a leadoff hitter on the roster. So I'm with you there. But
I'm very much against me at short.
are you?
Yeah. I think he's a very natural second baseman. I think if he's gonna play, I'd put him at second and then put Sosa, which is all right, maybe not. Maybe Sosa DHs. I don't know. But I'd
I'm kind
rather
of
have like
hoping.
Baldwin or Rojas, somebody else at short. I think Mejoth is a very good second baseman, and I'd like to keep him there.
Okay.
I think he should play. Just I wouldn't put him at short.
Yeah. So I mean, we've covered middle infield, we've covered corners, and now kind of just putting it all together. Like we said from the very top, and I think the whole world is saying this. The infield with this team right now is an absolute nightmare. It's difficult to prognosticate who's going to get what. And Ian agrees with you. Meadroff is short is rough. The range and the arm just aren't there. So yeah. But when you throw it all together, you talk about you're kind of leaning towards Rojas at third, maybe. I know they're saying Vargas right now. It's difficult to give him that the way the glove plays. But if his bat comes around, I almost feel like if he can start swinging it the way he did in the minors, that maybe you found yourself your DH who
Yeah.
can, spell somebody every now and again, sparingly in the infield. Uh,
It's still like Ramos at third.
I
Ramos would
really
be my
like
pick
Brian
there.
Ramos, especially with the second half he had last season. That's the guy that we were kind of waiting to see, and I think that's the guy you get with consistent at bats. So,
No,
well,
if I had to do it, I would put Rojas at short, Ramos at third, and then either Mejoff or Sosa at second. That would be my. And then you can DH Vargas. If I was the manager, that's how I would do it from an outside perspective.
yeah, and again, I don't envy Will Venable at all this season with that cast of characters that he's got. I don't think that whatever we see on opening day is going to see it was going to be what we see maybe as soon as 2 weeks into the season, or at least when the weather starts to slightly warm up just a little bit and we get into like the end of April and early May, and we might see a completely different cast of characters. It's really kind of tough to predict. So again, as we get more news, we'll run over these things a little bit here and there as we get closer to opening day. But yeah, man, it's a tough group. It really is. You got a few minutes? You want to stick around for a little bit? You want to try to knock out the outfield?
Yeah, why
What we
not?
got? I mean,
Outfield's gonna
we're
be
getting
short.
close to an hour here. Outfield's going to be pretty quick. Let's go ahead and knock that out, and then maybe we can touch on a couple of little highlights and lowlights of games, and we'll get out of here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and start with your outfielders, and I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple for now. It's going to be Benny in left, Robert in center, and then a combination of Talkman and Slater in right. And Slater will play some left too. It just kind of depends on the matchup. Slater um, is really just here to hit righties. Um, so, um, or sorry, lefties. Got those mixed up. Um, and then obviously they signed Michael A. Taylor to be kind of the utility outfield kind of guy.
He can play a
He's
little
a
bit of center too.
right. Yeah, he's the if Robert gets traded, that's who's playing center field type of guy. So yeah, I mean that's the five, and then obviously you have other guys. You have Deloach who played a little bit last year, Fletcher, um, and then I'm missing one. Oh, Colas, but they're planning on moving him to first. But so you kind of have those three guys, but there's really not a a spot for them. They have five guys who are signed to major league deals who have got to make the team. So that's really it. I mean, I'm excited. I think Talkman's a really good addition to this team. I think he's my favorite offseason addition. He went deep today, so that helps.
Yeah, it was
Um,
a nice shot. Real nice shot.
yeah, but I think he's a solid everyday right fielder. Again, solid, not anything special, but I think he'll work in right. And then you have Robert and Benny, who we have known about for years, unless Robert gets traded, and then
Right.
I think it'll be Michael A. Taylor in
Yeah,
center.
and I'm kind of the thought that if Robert hasn't been traded at this point, I don't see it happening before the season starts. I know some people are hopeful that happens, but I kind of like the fact that teams are kind of scoffing at the White Sox ass currently. Excuse me. um, and it just tells me that Getz isn't really lowering his price any. I feel like he's maybe gotten some pushback about some of the deals that he made. Like, I mean, even it was just this afternoon, USA Today graded the Crochet trade a D, and I was like, ooh, I don't know about that because I feel like we got the catcher of the future out of that deal, and we got a decent pitching arm, out of that deal as well. So I think I don't. That was actually the one deal I didn't feel like was a complete miss. And I'm hoping I'm wrong about the other ones as well. I hope some of these guys come around. The Kopech Petty trade. Obviously, we're banking on Vargas as being the centerpiece, but the two other guys that came over in that, obviously, still a year, two, maybe even three away. Uh,
I think they're both either one of them's hurt or both of them are hurt.
right, but
So we'll
both of
see
them
if they
are
can get
very young,
healthy.
so
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Like, we'll see. It might take a couple of years for that to play out, but Kyle Teal, I think really solid move in there. Is it going to be something that we can match up grade wise against Garrett Crochet? Time will tell. I don't really know, but at least we got something that feels like there's a future in one position, a future, regular MLB guy. So
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Drake. Said one guy who's looked good to me in spring has been Bryce Wilson. Um, yeah, I think he's been really good. He seems like a guy that McKibben kind of handpicked to come over. Obviously, he saw something there. Um, and I don't even know if he's going to start in the pen. I think he's a guy who potentially could be in the rotation day one, and then potentially move to the pen. He's kind of a guy who can be a long relief or can be a guy who's a staple in the rotation. So I think that was a good signing, and I'm excited to see what he has going forward.
yeah, I agree. I think there's a chance that he cracks the rotation. I'm not going to say that as of yet. Um, but like we said earlier in the show, I think we'll probably focus almost an entire show on pitching as we get a little bit closer and we know a little bit more about where uh, Getz and Venable's head is at on those things. Um, Anything else? Oh, let's talk about some of those quick highlights. We brought up Kyle Teal. Kyle Teal is like international superstar overnight. Have you caught any of this?
Yeah, he took Sasaki deep, way
Dude,
deep too.
monster bomb.
Um,
The sound of the
yeah,
bat was amazing.
yeah,
So,
he's a guy I'm excited about. I really like Braden Montgomery too. Montgomery was my guy I wanted at 5. Um, just loved him at Texas A&M. So excited for him. But yeah, Teal is Teal has looked very, very good um, going forward, and yeah, I think he's a guy who will see some action in Chicago this year.
right on, right on. Yeah, we don't have much to hang against the Cubs fans these days, but when you see a bomb like that off a Roki Sasaki, uh, however you say his name is, I think I might have butchered
I
it.
think you nailed it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. When you've got if that's the only thing you got, it's fun to get excited about the little things. So, just felt like I would bring that up. Mike Talkman with the big bomb. We've got a couple other guys that have hit some bombs early on this year. Uh, you know, the overall batting averages, the amount of Ks that we've seen so far in spring training are disheartening. But it is nice to see guys putting the ball over the fence a little bit. They always say that hitting is usually ahead of pitching early on. Uh, I don't know how that works out with the White Sox organization in particular right now, but it looks like it could be the other way around. Some of our pitchers got knocked around early in games, and then it looks like whoever they bring in later on is kind of you know it just held it down. So
Right.
again, it's early, it's spring training for everybody, so we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But
I mean, this is
I
not going to be a fun offense to watch. I'll be completely honest. It's going to be a poor offense. Um, yeah, I think the pitching
yeah,
staff will be fun to watch. I don't know. I just don't think the bats are ever going to catch up to the pitching. I think it's going to be a rough year hitting wise.
Yeah, me too. But I'll save my thoughts on that because before this season starts, we'll get into the way too early prediction show where we'll go ahead and make some bold or maybe not so bold predictions early on. I promise you, this year I'm not going to say 74 as far as wins go. But maybe
Shooting
we'll
for
talk
80 this
about.
year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm shooting for. I'm hoping to death they don't end up with 100 losses again. But I don't know how that's going to go. But again, we'll save that for
We'll get
next
into
show.
that later. Yeah, I have
Yeah, we
thoughts on that.
absolutely will. So we're a little over the hour mark. I think we pretty much hit on everything we wanted to hit on tonight. Unless you got something else you want to add, Jacob.
I want to hit on Clevenger real quick and just how bad.
Oh, we did.
Oh,
I did forget about him. Let's go ahead and do
yeah. Apparently, he wants to close, which I guess if Baroa is hurt, then I just don't understand the signing. I've hated on Clevenger for a while. Obviously, off the field, he's a horrible human being. Um, that's been well documented. That's not even a take. And yeah, I don't understand the signing at all. I get it's a minor league deal. Um, but I saw somebody on Twitter and they were like, "Yeah, he's a good innings eater," and was like, "Yeah, the dude pitched like 16 innings last year, and then
Yeah,
tore a disc."
yeah,
It's a horrible signing. I don't get it. I don't know understand why you would alienate the fan base by signing him, but that's
yeah. I
just
don't
me.
either. Getz was asked about it a few days ago, and he kind of danced around a little bit and said like, "Hey, we obviously know." How the fan base feels about it because he's been with us the last couple of years. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically was like, we've been close to the situation and we know a little bit more about the situation and we probably feel better about it because there are things going on in the background that maybe most people don't know. Sorry, I've left that comment up way too long. Uh, but yeah, sorry, Bryce, your poor back. I don't really know what that means. You know what I mean? Like we've heard, it's been out there, it's been thrown around that he's gone to counseling. Obviously, he had to in the beginning, anyways. I think it was mandated by MLB for him to even be reactivated or to stay, on an active status in baseball. What that really does for him, I'm not sure. Uh, but there's the rumor of knowing people. He's got friends in high places, an investor or somebody on
Yeah, I saw that
the
string of
board.
whatever on Twitter about how like yeah he knows. I don't know.
Some people will say they even know the name. I don't really know how true any of that is, but
Yeah,
apparently they feel comfortable with it, and I don't really know why. But what
it's just
kills me with this whole thing is we've got a stable of arms, right?
right,
It's the one thing the White Sox have up and down the system, and I feel like yeah, Baroa is going through his elbow strain, whatever. There's a handful of guys that I feel like could potentially be closers
right.
in the system. And I don't understand why. Thanks, James. I know you know the name, but we're not gonna, we're not in the business of throwing that kind of stuff out here on hot takes and heaters. So, um, I just feel like his presence, making the ball club, kind of blocks some of the younger, probably even better suited arms, especially for a closer spot on this team.
Yeah, yeah. That's my worry. Is like he's gonna make the team over like Ivory or Yarte, and it's like that's a fun arm I'd rather see in the MLB who had success last year, but it's
Isn't
gonna be
Erie
like
Arte? Is he going through some injury stuff right now, or am I mistaken?
I thought he was healthy. He could be injured. No idea.
Maybe he is.
I
I
thought
thought he was dealing with something, but I could be wrong. Because that, I mean, that's in the long run. I do feel like he is one of those guys that could be closer material.
yeah.
So,
I thought he was getting stretched out to be a starter. That's what I thought was the
well,
talk
I mean,
was.
originally, I don't know if they really knew exactly what direction they were going to go with him. I just know that he's, in that trade that he came over in, he was the fireballer, right? So,
Yeah,
he's got a cannon throwing
yeah,
lightning bolts up there, and I just feel like it profiles. You know what I mean? Could he be a starter? Very possibly. Yeah. I just feel like, and he's not the only one. He's not the
yeah.
only one. I don't really think we have enough time to even go through that. Like I said,
No,
we're
we
gonna
won't.
we're gonna spend a show going through pitching, so I don't want to spend too much time on who I feel like the closer is going to be and potentially who could be blocked by a Clev. But it regardless, Clevenger's a head scratcher from front to back. It's I don't get it either. It doesn't leave you with a good feeling, right?
No, not at all. It's a mind boggling move that
It
alienates a
is
fan
indeed.
base who is already angry at you. But hey, I'm not paid to be the
Yeah.
GM, so
No, 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 no. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be in a 1,200 square foot house in Burbank if I was a GM. So you know. Anywho, I think that's it. We're gonna go ahead
yeah,
and wrap it up. I first want to say thank you to all of our chatters and commenters and live viewers this evening. And then thank you to all of you who are listening, whether it be Thursday morning or beyond, sometime this week on podcast form. We appreciate all of you guys. We thank you for checking in, and we hope to hear from all of you, whether it be live or in the comment section after we drop all our recordings. Uh, this has been Hot Takes and Heaters. You can find us Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Central on YouTube and Twitch, or as Ian would call it, the Purple app. For all of our written content and Patreon exclusives, you can find that at FutureSox.net. Check out our prospect and MLB highlights on X at FutureSox or also on our YouTube channel at FutureSox. Go ahead and like, subscribe, hit that little bell for notifications. And, just a reminder if you like any of the content, super chats are on all of our live streams, whether it's here with us at Hot Takes and Heaters, or the one and only Future Sox podcast with James and Ian. And of course, we also will be dropping episodes from uh, Jeff and Elijah on the roundup. So if you guys feel so inclined, you like the content, go ahead and hit us up with those super chats. You can go to futuresox.net and hit our Patreon for exclusive content. We appreciate all and any love. And until next time, thanks for checking in. Go White Sox.